everyone. Welcome to the Safe House, brought to you by the SafeHouse Initiative. I'm Jeff Edwards, co-chair of the SafeHouse Initiative, and your host for today's podcast. We have a very exciting program for you today. Welcome back to this series. Last week, Frank Angelelli walked us through roles and responsibilities, and today our guest is going to take it one step further and like to welcome to the Safe House. Welcome, Aaron Goldstein.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here today.
We're excited to have you, buddy. Hey, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and give a little bit about your background before we get started?
Absolutely. So I'm Aaron Goldstein. I'm currently VP of Incident Response at Todyl, a cybersecurity platform. I have about 14 years of digital forensics and incident response background, primarily around IR consulting, helping organizations respond and recover to catastrophic cyber incidents, whether it's ransomware, insider threat, extortion, or otherwise. And so been able to assist a lot of organizations, large and small, some of the ones you've read about in the news, and kind of see behind the scenes on a lot of that, as well as do a lot of the ransomware negotiation, payment, and recovery capabilities as well.
Well, Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. Now, I'm going to step back and let my co-host for the series take it away. Alex?
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Aaron, for being here today to talk about incident response silos. So thank you so much for being here, Aaron.
Yeah, excited to do it, and happy to talk with you, Alex.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be amazing. So Aaron and I worked together at a company called Arete just a few years ago, and we had a lot of incident response engagements where teams did not communicate or collaborate with other teams. Aaron, can you talk a little bit about some incidents that you've dealt with personally where communication just doesn't flow between the teams and a lot of mistakes potentially are made?
Yeah, absolutely. It's unfortunate. And, the way I like to explain it is oftentimes I'm engaging with an organization that is dealing with what might be the worst day of their professional career or the worst series of days, weeks, months. And, in those types of events, when there is an incident that is bringing systems down, causing major interruptions, or completely destroying, all the capabilities of a company, I think it's really important to understand that not everyone is as well-oiled as you might think. Even large organizations can struggle with these types of responses. And so many of the incidents that we handled, especially in the small and medium business range, when you go in and help out with, let's just call it a ransomware case as an example, you come in and their network is completely down. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to respond. Oftentimes, they don't even have an IR plan in place. So when you're starting out with having nothing in place, it's even harder because you don't know who to contact, what severity this incident is, what your legal or compliance requirements are, or anything else. So oftentimes what we'll do is we'll walk into an incident and it's absolute chaos. So what we try to do is establish a clear line of communication and set up roles and responsibilities right off the bat, even if they don't have an IR plan. These silos that can happen where, IT is just focused on getting systems back up and running, or maybe rebuilding domain controller, whatever it might be. The managerial side or the key stakeholders on the business side are worried about, how long is it going to be until we can get operational? What is our legal implication here? What are the things that we need to be doing? So every different group has their own concerns and priorities of what they need to do. And without proper communication, everyone's just kind of running on their own, and duplication of effort and operating in that silo can be really, really painful. So as an example, walk in one time and, small business, I believe it was a dry cleaning company. They got hit with a ransomware, and, we walk in and they only had a few employees and they outsourced their IT to an MSP. That MSP was trying to assist, but in trying to assist, what they did was, as soon as they saw the ransomware event, they started wiping those hard drives. And just starting fresh. They didn't realize that it was impacting all of the systems in that network. And so as they were popping up, they were just destroying all of the evidence that's absolutely critical for a team like ours in the IR side to understand what happened, how it happened, and how to effectively contain it. Having those actions and having those steps in place for each of your groups, what should be done, who should we call, and how should we proceed is really, really important, because things like, just wiping those systems can be absolutely catastrophic to any type of forensic efforts. And then lastly, on the same side, on the business end of it, we see some organizations we walk into and, day one, they get hit with ransomware and they're shut down. And they're already planning on putting out a public notification with as much detail as they can without consulting any kind of PR or legal or any other kind of group. And so that can be equally as dangerous. While it's important to notify your customers and potential impacted parties, it's also important to make sure that you follow a good process to ensure that you're giving relevant information without giving too much, as well as kind of balancing some of those legal and compliance concerns. So those are just some of the examples as far as, how those different kind of groups can silo themselves or maybe operate independently without consideration of the wider incident response team or strategy.
It's so interesting. I think you brought up 6 of the flaws within incident response planning within 3-minute time frame. And that's really just shows how important it is to have a plan and ensure that we are mitigating the risk of having any of the flaws that we are noting within this pod series that we're discussing. You answered the most important question here that I wanted to bring up, and that is the importance of cross-functional collaboration. And I still remember that incident with the laundromat, and there are a few others that we actually worked on together where that cross-functional collaboration within the incident response for a business email compromise even caused some issues. Do you want to talk a little bit about how it's not just with ransomware, but there are other types of threats that could occur where that cross-functional collaboration needs to be there, and you can't just silo out your incident response efforts?
Yeah, and that's a great point. I think with business email compromise, ransomware seems to take the headlines the most, especially in the past couple of years. It's slowing down a little, in my opinion, but business email compromise, at least in my organization and what we're seeing across all the companies we protect, it is shot up, probably 250% over the past year. I recently gave a talk outlining some of the ways that MFA can be bypassed even. So multi-factor authentication, while it's great, does not always mean that an account is bulletproof from a phish. So I kind of highlight some of those ideas and some of the ways that that's done. But the reality here is that businesses really need to understand where their users are, where they're logging in from, and putting some of those security controls in place, because it's not just the compromise of an email. A lot of times we're seeing these types of attacks where threat actors are getting in and they're perpetuating additional fraud, either by using the legitimacy of the account they've hacked or by creating fake invoices, fake payroll statements, and things of that nature to defraud that organization. And so oftentimes when we come in, it can be fairly easy to spot and understand when you're looking at those logs and say, oh, you know what? This user normally logs in from Florida, and today they're logging in from Brazil, and they did a full sync on the account. Pretty obvious to an incident responder that's looking at those logs, but on a day-to-day basis, most of these admins that are handling these small and medium businesses, and sometimes even in the larger scope of things, the visibility isn't there to understand when these risky activities are happening, when these suspicious behaviors are occurring, and so they can't cut it off in time. And so what'll happen is we'll get involved and, we'll be told, oh, well, accounts payable took in a wire transfer invoice and they sent out money, to this account. It was only later that we realized that, the account that we sent it to was requested by a domain that had an imposter. So maybe the lowercase L instead of an I, or, different types of ways that you can substitute a domain and make it look similar. That's where it gets really interesting as well, is because there's not a lot of playbooks for that. What people don't often realize is, especially in a business email compromise, when you do engage an IR firm, for example, to do a business email compromise investigation, we always include a legal counsel or a breach coach, as we call it. And part of the reason for that is there are certain actions that can happen with a business email compromise that require notification across a lot of different states and parties, because, for example, if that threat actor synced the entire mailbox, now they potentially have access to any and all sensitive data across that user's entire mailbox, versus sometimes you can see that they only search for certain emails or access certain things. So oftentimes we'll see when there's a company that has no IR plan and they try to resolve a business email compromise, yeah, they're going to go reset that user's password. They're maybe turn on MFA if it wasn't on, but they're not doing these additional steps and understanding the risk in not reporting that and in not disclosing some of these major security concerns. So these all kind of operate independently of each other. And the business, once again, is focused on getting things back up and running. IT is focused on resolving the technical incident or issue, but no one's really working with their legal team or consulting a third-party legal team to make sure that they're not running afoul of any of these compliance or regulatory requirements.
Yeah, that's incredible. All the stories are really interesting, and I'm just counting how many flaws within incident response planning flaws we're talking about today, and how it's so important to not only have the plan, not only ensure that you have communication through all your different teams, ensure that you know who is supposed to be doing what and when, but then regulatory and compliance you brought up, which is going to be just in a few weeks. I think in 2 weeks, we're going to be discussing with Stu Penensky about the legal landmines of cyber incident response. And we talk about that here, just being able to collaborate with the different teams to ensure that you have all the information to provide over is going to be very relevant and very important at that moment. So talk about some challenges you've seen as an incident responder and someone who's worked on these engagements. What are some things that you've seen happen when the incident commander doesn't know who to communicate and collaborate with? What kind of challenges and what kind of issues occurred because the wrong person was doing the wrong thing at the wrong time?
Yeah, absolutely. And where I think it's kind of interesting to think about that, I think of a lot of small and medium businesses don't always prioritize having an IR plan and having that process ready to go. And as you get to those bigger organizations, they start to have one and they start to have a process. But even in those larger organizations, having a plan doesn't mean anything if you're not dusting it off once in a while and practicing and exercising it. So, one of the common trends I come into is, oh yeah, we have an IR plan. And I'm like, great, you know what? We have an incident. Let's crack it open. Let's follow your policy, and we can always improve it along the way. And it's okay. Well, who's the first person to call? Well, our CISO. And then I open up that document and the contact information. Well, that was 3 CISOs ago. We haven't updated this document in 2 years. And that's the type of thing I run into a lot is, these outdated plans that, somebody put a checkbox next to their insurance questionnaire that they have an IR plan, but they've never tested it. They've never actually made sure it's valuable and can actually save them time. The whole goal of an IR plan is not just to have a piece of paper for that reason, but it's also to actually make sure that you can respond effectively. You can do these things in a clear and concise manner, and afterwards you can improve upon them. So many times I walk into an incident and that IR plan is almost useless, and we have to end up saying, okay, well, get me your active contacts. Let's talk to this team. Let's get all the key stakeholders into a war room, for example, something that seems to be, going the way of the dodo, unfortunately. Let's get everybody from all of your leads that are part of what we call like an extended IR team together. So your incident commander, let's get your CISO or head of security, let's get the IT department, legal, marketing, or public relations, whatever it might be. Let's get all these key people together in a room to talk about the incident. Let's talk about what is going right and going wrong and who is responsible for next steps. So establishing that clear line of communication can be really challenging sometimes, especially when you have competing personalities in a stressful situation. So sometimes, for example, I'll see the head of IT and the head of security butting heads on how they should respond, or the CISO wants to do something, but maybe the board or key stakeholders in the leadership team don't want to perform that type of action. And so sometimes you do run into these types of struggles, and that's where having that roles and responsibilities and delineating exactly who can make the final decision on something can be really, really important. And the result of doing this saves time and money. If you're hiring an IR consultant, it's not cheap. And so every hour that they're sitting on a call while the company's bickering amongst themselves is an hour that you're paying them for no resolution. So, making sure those things are ironed out ahead of time can save a lot of time and money, and also save people from doing the same thing in parallel without realizing it.
That's amazing. Hey, I just want to bring up at the beginning of that comment that you just made, you brought up extended incident response. And I just want to say, are we trying to coin a new term here with an X?
While I do love a great acronym, the way I kind of see it and the way I write my IR policies is, you have your IR team, your security team, those are your technical IT and security folks that are going to be handling the response. But it goes so much further than that. I'm sure as you're talking and doing these sessions with people, you'll learn that it's equally important to make sure that legal is in the loop, that your stakeholders or your board is in the loop, that everybody that needs to know has that seat at the table to understand what's going on and weigh in on important decisions. So I call them the extended IR team. But yeah, I mean, it's really however you want to position it. But yeah, I like that term.
I mean, I think we're going to start calling it the extended incident response plan. Sure. Let's do it.
All right.
Jeff, back to you. I mean, this has been amazing. Thank you so much, Aaron, for joining us today, and really excited to continue the conversation going on into next week as well, when we talk about communication channels and how we can communicate in different email threads or communication workflows, stuff like that. So, Jeff, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit.
Yeah. So, hey, Aaron, one of the things that I always like to do with our guests is to, if you have one thing to leave with our audience today that they could do to improve their lot in life, if you will, to make them more secure, what would you say the one thing you'd recommend to do today?
Great question. And, on the same topic, to me, it's really about preparation. We can have all the technical controls out there. You can have your EDR and your logging and everything else. And those are all great things to have. But at the end of the day, something can go wrong. There's always going to be some little hole or some way that these threat actors can exploit. And that's why this is such a big industry for them. And same as why we're so busy on the IR side. So what I would say is that an ounce of prevention can really save you an incredible amount of time and money by implementing these things. From an outsider's perspective, looking at an IR plan, if you start to Google around and look at templates and things like that, it can seem really, really daunting to get that set up. But for your small and medium business, for your even larger organization, you can start with something basic. You don't have to have it cover every single little thing. You can put in together a basic framework, and then as incidents come up, because not every incident is going to be a critical, terrible day, as they happen, run through that IR plan, practice it, see what works and what doesn't. And the whole purpose of an IR plan is that you should be doing lessons learned and follow up to improve it afterwards. So every incident that you have and every security concern, if you run through that plan and you realize that it would be more effective if we got this person looped in earlier, or if we took these steps in this type of incident, document that, make it part of your plan, and each time you will continuously improve. So that's a long way of me saying that you have to start somewhere, and it doesn't have to be this 50-page super in-depth manual. It can start out with the basics, and as you use it, it's going to get better, and before you know it, that thing is going to be very well vetted and perfect for your own organization.
Yeah, so basically take that first step of your journey.
Absolutely. And then lastly on that, I would say you got to test it too. So even if you're not in a place where you have all these cybersecurity incidents all the time, you can run what we call tabletop exercises. I'm actually working on a blog post on how to set those up and do them effectively here soon. And the concept is, let's walk through an incident and let's get those tech leaders together and the security and all that extended IR team together in a room for a couple hours. And let's walk through a scenario and see what that proposed response is. It doesn't have to be a fancy attack simulation and virtual machines running malware. It can be a PowerPoint. It can go through some major incidents and see what that response is and learn how your company as a whole can improve by making those decisions faster and more effectively.
Well, Aaron, I tell you what, you've been a wonderful guest, and really appreciate your contributions to the SafeHouse Initiative. And you're always welcome back anytime to talk with us further on the SafeHouse.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's been great, and look forward to talking again in the future.
Hey, Alex, it's interesting because what I heard today from Aaron is it's really foundationally is communications. And as I think through how you're taking our walk through our journey, our odyssey, if you will, 1 through 10 of these common mistakes, the most common mistakes, they kind of build upon each other, as I'm starting to realize and think about it. Because next week you just said something, we're going to go dig into communications, because that was one of the key themes I heard today from Aaron. Well, tell us more about next week and who's coming on board.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of this is that they sort of interconnect and overlap on each other. And that's the amazing part of incident response preparation and planning, is that each step makes you one step closer to 99 to 100% secure. You can't get to that 100% without preparation and learning how to respond. That planning part is going to be very important here too. And so next week, it's the communication strategies related to communication between the different teams and entities, internally and externally, and how to communicate. So one of the big things that we see with threat actors is that they will sit inside the environment and they will wait for the incident response team, the legal, the insurance to be engaged, and then start doxing those third parties and really trying to ruin the incident response steps to getting to full restoration and operational again. And I've observed this in many cases. And so next week, we're going to have Randy Pargman, who's been former FBI, who currently works for Proofpoint, and he will be discussing the risks of communicating on internal tools during a live incident and the strategies on how to communicate out of band. And then what tools do you use? Do you have a tool? Can you communicate with your external stakeholders and your internal stakeholders? And it'll be really exciting to hear his input on that topic.
Yeah, I'm real excited to hear about the out of band in particular communications.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
All right. Well, Alex, as always, a great job. And again, on behalf of the Safe House, Aaron Goldstein, you are a tremendous guest, and thank you for your insights. That's our podcast for today. I'm Jeff Edwards for the SafeHouse Initiative. Thanks for joining us, and remember, be safe, be resilient, and be kind to each other. For more information about the SafeHouse Initiative, please use your mobile device to scan the QR code on the screen, or send us an email at info@safehouseinitiative.org, or visit us on our website, safehouseinitiative.org. We look forward to hearing from you.